I stood on my parents' porch in Crescent Hollow, Ohio, with snow falling around me like tiny frozen accusations. My key would not turn in the lock. I tried again, twisting harder, but the mechanism refused to budge. Someone had changed the locks. My phone buzzed. A text from my father lit up the screen. Thomas Lane's name glowed in the darkness of Christmas Eve. His message was 5 words long. "You're not expected this Christmas." Before I could process those words, another message arrived. This one from my mother, Margaret Lane. "Pay us $37,000 and we'll let you in. Your brother needs a vacation." The wind cut through my coat. I read both messages twice, 3 times, as if repetition might change their meaning. $37,000. That was the price of entry into my childhood home. That was what my presence at the family Christmas was worth to them. What they did not know, what no one in this small frozen town understood yet, was that tomorrow morning my name would appear on national television. Tomorrow the world would learn that Harper Lane had just won an $8 million startup prize. And my family, the same people who had locked me out tonight, would watch that announcement from the living room where I was no longer welcome. I typed back 2 words. Understood. Then I walked away from the house where I had grown up, feeling like a permanent guest. Crescent Hollow sat in the northern part of Ohio, a small conservative town where everyone knew everyone else's business, and most people had opinions about things that were none of their concern. The snow was already 6 inches deep and still falling. Christmas lights twinkled from every house on Maple Street except the Lane residence. My parents had never bothered much with decorations. They said it was wasteful. What they meant was that appearances only mattered when Bryce was involved. Bryce was my older brother. He was 31 years old and had never held a job for more than 8 months. He played guitar in a band that performed at local bars, and my parents treated him like he was 1 album away from becoming a rock star. When I was 17, they told me I could not attend the state university because the tuition money needed to go toward Bryce's recording studio time. When I won a scholarship to study computer science, no one in my family came to the ceremony. I walked down the frozen sidewalk, my breath steamed in the cold air. Mrs. Patterson from next door peered through her curtains. I could imagine what she was thinking. There goes Harper Lane, always causing trouble during the holidays. The neighborhood had long ago decided that I was the difficult one, the ungrateful daughter who refused to appreciate what her family had done for her. What my family had done for me was tell me repeatedly that women did not belong in technology. What they had done was remind me at every holiday that Bryce was the talented one, the one with potential, the one who would make the Lane name proud. What they had done was treat my every success as an embarrassment and my every struggle as proof that they had been right about me all along. I found a cheap motel on the edge of town. The Crescent Motor Lodge had seen better decades. The worn carpet smelled heavily of stale smoke and neglect, and the heater rattled noisily, but the room had a bed and a television and enough privacy for me to fall apart without witnesses. I opened my laptop and checked my email. There it was, the message I had been waiting for. The National Innovators Summit had finalized tomorrow's schedule. My company, ArcLight Learning, was listed as a finalist for the grand prize, $8 million in funding, national media coverage, a platform to bring AI-powered STEM education to rural communities across America. 3 years ago, I had started building ArcLight from a studio apartment in Chicago while working double shifts at a diner. The idea was simple but powerful. Children in small towns like Crescent Hollow deserved the same access to STEM education as kids in wealthy suburbs. My platform used artificial intelligence to create personalized learning experiences for students who had been forgotten by the educational system. I had sent my parents updates about my work over the years. I had shared articles about ArcLight's early successes. Each time my messages went unanswered, or worse, I received responses suggesting I should focus on finding a husband instead. My phone rang. My father's name appeared on the screen. I answered. "Harper." His voice was cold. "Did you transfer the $37,000 yet?" "No." "Your brother cannot relax without that vacation. He's been stressed. The band isn't getting enough gigs. And this is my responsibility because you earn more than him." My father said this as if it were a crime. "You have some fancy tech job. You can afford to help your family for once." For once. as if I had not spent my entire childhood being the responsible one while Bryce collected participation trophies and praise, as if I had not worked 60-hour weeks while my brother slept until noon. "I'm not sending you money," I said. "Then don't bother coming home. The locks have been changed. You're not part of this Christmas." He hung up. I sat on the edge of the motel bed and stared at the wall. 29 years old, and my family still had the power to make me feel like nothing. Tomorrow I would stand on a stage in front of cameras and investors and prove that everything they believed about me was wrong. But tonight, on Christmas Eve, I was alone in a cheap motel room, locked out of my childhood home, because I refused to fund my brother's vacation. My mother sent another text. "You always were selfish. Bryce would do anything for family. Why can't you be more like him?" I did not respond. There was nothing to say to someone who had spent 3 decades convincing themselves that their daughter was worthless while their son walked on water. The television in the corner turned on when I pressed the power button. A local news anchor was talking about holiday traditions. Tomorrow, that same channel will carry coverage of the National Innovators Summit. Tomorrow, my face will appear on screens across the country. My family did not know any of this. They had not asked about my work in years. They had no idea that their daughter, the one they considered a failure, had built something extraordinary from nothing. I closed my laptop and turned off the lights. The motel room was cold and dark and nothing like home. But then again, the house on Maple Street had never really been home either. It had been a place where I learned that love came with conditions, that approval had to be earned, and that some people would never see your worth no matter how brightly you shone. Tomorrow would change everything. Not because I needed my family's validation. I had stopped needing that years ago. But because tomorrow, the truth would come out, and for the first time in my life, the whole world would see what my family had refused to acknowledge. I was not the failure they had created in their minds. I was Harper Lane, founder of ArcLight Learning, and I was about to become impossible to ignore. I woke to gray winter light filtering through thin motel curtains, and another message from my mother. "Your father is furious. Send the money or don't bother contacting us again. Sha." I deleted the text without responding and began preparing for the most important day of my life. The National Innovators Summit was being held in Columbus, about 90 minutes from Crescent Hollow, Ohio. I had a rental car waiting and a schedule that left no room for family drama. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Mira Collins, my co-founder and the closest thing I had to a sister. Ready to change the world today. Mira and I had met 3 years earlier at a coding boot camp in Chicago. She was a software engineer from Detroit who had grown up in circumstances similar to mine. We understood each other in ways that my biological family never could. When I told her about building an AI-powered STEM education platform for rural communities, she immediately asked how she could help. Together, we had turned an idea sketched on napkins into a working prototype, then into a company that served 12,000 students across 7 states. ArcLight Learning was not just my dream. It was proof that 2 women with no connections and no family money could build something that mattered. I showered and dressed in the navy blazer I had bought specifically for this occasion. The fabric was not expensive, but it fit well and made me look like someone who belonged on a stage. 3 years ago, I could not have afforded this jacket. 3 years ago, I was serving eggs at a 24-hour diner and teaching myself Python at 3 in the morning. The drive to Columbus took me through frozen farmland and small towns that looked just like Crescent Hollow. Every mile put distance between me and the house where I was no longer welcome. Every mile brought me closer to the place where I finally belonged. The convention center was massive and gleaming and filled with people who had built things. Entrepreneurs in expensive suits, investors clutching coffee cups and scanning the room for opportunity, journalists with cameras and notebooks, and scattered throughout people like me. People who had come from nothing and turned their ideas into reality. I checked in at the registration desk and received a badge with my name and title, Harper Lane, founder, ArcLight Learning. A woman behind me glanced at my badge and smiled. "I read about your company last month. The work you're doing for rural STEM education is incredible." "Thank you." I was still not used to strangers knowing who I was. The main auditorium was cavernous with stadium seating and a stage dominated by massive screens. This was where the finalist presentations would happen. This was where my life would change. I found Mira Collins near the coffee station. She looked nervous but ready, her laptop bag clutched against her chest. We had practiced our pitch dozens of times, refined our slides, until every word and image served a purpose. We knew our company inside and out. We knew our story. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Like I'm about to either throw up or change the world, possibly both." Mira laughed. "That sounds about right." We made our way to the holding area for finalists. There were 5 companies in total, all competing for the $8 million grand prize. The other founders looked polished and confident, the products of venture capital connections and Stanford MBA programs. I was the only one who had built my company while working as a waitress. An event coordinator approached us with a clipboard. "Harper Lane, we need you for final verification before the announcement." I followed her to a small office where a man with silver hair and kind eyes introduced himself as the summit director. He explained that the judges had made their decision and that my company had been selected for a special recognition. My heart hammered against my ribs. "The children in rural areas will benefit enormously from your project," he said. "The judges were particularly moved by your personal connection to the mission." I thanked him and returned to the holding area in a daze. Mira grabbed my arm. "Well, what did they say?" "I think we might actually win this thing." Before she could respond, my phone buzzed with another message from Crescent Hollow. My father this time. "Your mother is crying because of you. She wanted the family together for Christmas and you ruined it. Send the money or you're dead to us." Dead to us. As if I had not already been dead to them for years. As if my accomplishments meant nothing and my existence was only valuable when it served their needs. "What's wrong?" Mira asked, watching my face change. "Nothing. Just my family reminding me why I don't go home anymore." She squeezed my shoulder. "Forget them. Today is about you and everything you've built. They don't get to take that away." She was right. I silenced my phone and focused on the stage. The opening ceremonies had begun. Speakers talked about innovation and entrepreneurship and the American dream. Names were called. Awards were presented. The energy in the room built like a wave approaching shore. Finally, the moment arrived. The summit director returned to the stage with an envelope in his hand. The room fell silent. Cameras swung toward the podium. "This year's competition has showcased extraordinary talent and vision," he said. "Our finalists represent the best of American innovation. But there is one company that stood above the rest. A company built by 2 remarkable women who believe that every child deserves access to quality education regardless of zip code or income level." I gripped Mira's hand. "The winner of the $8 million National Startup Prize is ArcLight Learning." The auditorium erupted in applause. Mira screamed and hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. People were standing, cameras flashed. My name echoed through the enormous space, and for one perfect moment, all the years of struggle and doubt and family rejection fell away. I walked toward the stage on legs that felt disconnected from my body. The lights were blinding, the crowd was thunderous, and somewhere in Crescent Hollow, Ohio, a family that had locked me out on Christmas Eve had no idea that their daughter had just become someone they could no longer ignore. The stage lights burned hot against my face as I approached the podium. $8 million, national recognition, and a platform microphone waiting to amplify whatever I chose to say. The audience stretched before me like an ocean of expectant faces, cameras blinking red in the darkness beyond. I had prepared a speech, careful words about education and opportunity and the children we hope to serve. Professional, grateful, exactly what a winner should say. But standing there with the weight of all those watching eyes, I found myself thinking about a locked door on a frozen porch. "Thank you." My voice came out steadier than I expected. 3 years ago, I was working double shifts at a diner in Chicago, teaching myself to code on a laptop held together with tape and hope. I had no investors, no connections, no family support. What I had was an idea and a refusal to let anyone tell me I wasn't capable of making it real. The applause swelled. I waited for it to subside before continuing. Arclight learning exists because I grew up in a small town where opportunities were limited and expectations were even more so. I watched talented kids give up on their dreams because nobody showed them what was possible. This company, our AI-powered STEM learning platform, is my answer to that injustice. Every student we reach, every life we change, proves that where you come from doesn't have to determine where you go. I did not mention my family. I did not need to. The audience understood struggle. They recognized the particular shape of success that rises from ashes. After the formal presentation, journalists surrounded me like hungry birds at a feast. Questions came rapid fire. How did you develop the technology? What's next for Arclight? How does it feel to win? It feels, I said carefully, like proof that hard work matters more than pedigree. A reporter from a national network asked about my background. I told him about growing up in Ohio, about working multiple jobs, about the nights when giving up seemed easier than continuing. I did not mention the family that had never believed in me. Some wounds were not for public consumption. Mira Collins appeared at my side, glowing with pride. You were incredible up there. We were incredible. This is your win, too. She shook her head. You built the foundation. I just helped with the walls. We spent the next hour fielding interview requests and accepting congratulations from strangers who seemed genuinely moved by our story. Investors pressed business cards into my hands. Conference organizers asked about future speaking engagements. The world had suddenly become interested in Harper Lane, and the attention was both exhilarating and overwhelming. During a brief break between interviews, I checked my phone for the first time since winning. The screen was flooded with notifications, congratulatory emails, social media mentions, and nestled among them like poison in honey messages from my family. My mother had texted 7 times in the past hour. The tone shifted dramatically across those messages. The first one sent just after the announcement simply said, "Is this true?" The following messages grew increasingly frantic. "Harper people are saying you won some prize. Why didn't you tell us? Call us immediately. The whole town is talking about this." My father had left 3 voicemails. I did not listen to them. Bryce had sent a single text, "So now you're famous, typical, always have to make everything about you." I stared at those words on the small, glowing screen. 36 hours ago, these same people had demanded $37,000 as the price of my presence at Christmas dinner. They had changed the locks. They had told me I was not expected. And now, because cameras were involved, they suddenly wanted to claim me. Mira Collins noticed my expression. "Bad news from home. News from home is always bad. That's why I left." She nodded, understanding, without needing details. "You don't owe them anything. Not your time, not your attention, not your forgiveness. You built this without them." I put my phone away and returned to the celebration. The summit continued with panels and networking events, but everywhere I went, people recognized me. The girl from nowhere who had built something remarkable, the underdog story everyone loved. A young woman approached me near the evening reception. She could not have been older than 22. Her eyes were bright with something that looked like hope. "Ms. Lane, I'm from a small town in Kentucky. I've been following your company for 2 years. You're the reason I started learning to code." I was not prepared for how those words would hit me. All the awards and funding and media attention meant something abstract. But this young woman standing before me with tears threatening to spill meant something real. "Keep building," I told her. "The people who doubt you will either come around or become irrelevant. Either way, you win." She hugged me, a stranger embracing a stranger, and I understood for the first time why I had done all of this. Not for the money, not for recognition, not to prove anything to my family. I had built Arclight because somewhere out there was a girl like me struggling alone, needing to know that success was possible. Later that night, I sat in my hotel room watching the evening news. My face appeared on screen, a clip from my acceptance speech, playing while anchors discussed the summit's outcomes. They mentioned my hometown. They mentioned that I had built my company from nothing. My phone rang. A local Ohio number. I answered without thinking. "Harper." It was Mrs. Patterson, the neighbor who had watched me through her curtains last night. Dear, is it really you on the television? Yes, Mrs. Patterson, it's me. Well, I never. She sounded genuinely shocked. Your parents must be so proud. I had no response to that. The silence stretched uncomfortably. They're not home right now, she continued. I saw them leave in a rush about an hour ago. Lots of cars in the driveway earlier, people coming and going. The town was talking. The news had reached Crescent Hollow, Ohio, and my family was facing questions they could not answer. How had they missed this? Why were they not celebrating with their successful daughter? What kind of parents raised a prize-winning entrepreneur without knowing anything about her work? Thank you for calling, I said. Merry Christmas, Mrs. Patterson. I hung up and turned off my phone completely. Tomorrow would bring more interviews, more attention, more demands. But tonight I wanted to sit in silence and remember how far I had come. Morning arrived gray and cold. I sat in my Columbus hotel room watching local news coverage spread across the country. Every station seemed to have picked up the story. Small-town woman wins National Innovation Prize. Midwest entrepreneur takes home $8 million. The underdog founder who built an empire. My phone, which I had turned back on, reluctantly showed 100 missed calls. Most were from numbers I did not recognize, but scattered among them were calls from Crescent Hollow, Ohio, my parents, my brother, distant relatives who had not contacted me in years. Suddenly everyone wanted a piece of Harper Lane. I drove back toward Crescent Hollow that afternoon, not to see my family. I needed to collect some belongings from a storage unit where I had kept childhood items, but as I approached the town limits I realized that returning might have been a mistake. The local diner was crowded with faces I recognized from my youth. Through the foggy windows I could see people clustered around the counter talking animatedly. When I walked inside to order coffee, the room fell silent. Harper, a woman named Dorothy who had worked at my elementary school, approached me slowly. Is it really you? We just saw you on the news. Hello, Dorothy. Yes, it's me. The crowd seemed uncertain how to react. For years these people had accepted my family's version of events. Harper was the difficult one. Harper was ungrateful. Harper had abandoned her loving parents to chase foolish dreams. Now that version of reality had collided with $8 million in national television coverage. Your parents must be over the moon, someone said from the back of the diner. I ordered my coffee without responding to that particular comment. The barista, a young man I did not recognize, handed me my cup with wide eyes. Ms. Lane, I read about your company this morning. What you're doing for rural STEM education is exactly what this town needs. Thank you. That means a lot. I took my coffee and drove to the storage unit on the edge of town. The facility was quiet and dusty, unchanged from the last time I had visited years ago. I unlocked the small room where I kept boxes of photographs and childhood awards, the tangible evidence of a life my family had tried to diminish. As I sorted through old papers, my phone buzzed with another message from my mother. The whole town is asking about you. Come home immediately. We need to talk as a family. And I read those words several times. Come home. As if home was a place that had ever welcomed me, as if the locks had not been changed specifically to keep me out. 2 days ago, I was not expected at Christmas. Now my presence was demanded. I did not respond. Another message arrived, this time from my father. This is serious, Harper. The media keeps calling. What did you tell them about us? I had told them nothing about my family. The interviews had focused on my company, my journey, my vision for education. But silence, I realized, was also a story. By not crediting my parents with support they had never provided, I had allowed the world to draw its own conclusions. My brother's text was more aggressive. You're making us look bad. Fix this. Fix what exactly? The truth. The reality that they had never attended a single graduation, never celebrated a single achievement, never shown the slightest interest in my work until it made national news. I finished at the storage unit and drove through town one more time. The streets looked smaller than I remembered, the houses more cramped, the ambitions more limited. This was the place that had tried to convince me I was nothing special. This was the place I had escaped. Outside the local hardware store, I saw old Mr. Finnegan, a retired teacher who had once encouraged my interest in mathematics. He spotted me and hurried over, moving faster than a man his age should. Harper Lane. He grasped my hand with both of his. I always knew you'd do something remarkable. You were the brightest student I ever taught. Thank you, Mr. Finnegan. That means more than you know. I saw the news this morning. Education technology for rural communities. He shook his head in wonder. You remembered where you came from, and you're trying to make it better. That's rare. We talked for a few minutes about my company and his grandchildren and the changes that had come to Crescent Hollow over the years. When I mentioned that I should be going, his expression grew serious. Your family isn't talking about you the way they should be, he said quietly. I've heard things. People are starting to ask questions. Let them ask. He nodded slowly. You turned out good, Harper, despite everything. Maybe because of everything. I drove away from Crescent Hollow with those words echoing in my mind. Despite everything. The town was waking up to a truth that had always been obvious to anyone paying attention. The Lane family's golden child was not Bryce. It had never been Bryce. The child they had dismissed and diminished had become the one worth knowing. That evening, Mira Collins called with updates from the summit aftermath. Investors wanted meetings. Media outlets wanted interviews. The world wanted more of Harper Lane. Also, she said carefully, someone from your hometown called the office, a woman claiming to be your mother. She was quite upset that we wouldn't give out your personal phone number. What did you tell her? I told her that all media inquiries should go through our communications team, very professionally. I laughed, but it was not a happy sound. My mother was not trying to reach me out of maternal love. She was trying to manage a narrative that had spun out of her control. The story is getting bigger, Mira continued. Multiple networks want to feature us in their New Year programming. There's talk of a documentary. Harper, this is beyond anything we imagined. Beyond anything I had imagined, certainly. When I started ArcLight, I just wanted to help kids like me find their potential. I never expected to become a symbol of success against adversity. I never expected my family's rejection to become part of my public story. But that was the thing about truth. It had a way of surfacing no matter how many locks were changed or how many doors were closed. The living room of the Lane house had not changed in 15 years. The same floral couch, the same family portraits on the mantel arranged to feature Bryce prominently, while I faded into the background. The same television where local news now played a story that was rearranging everything my family believed about themselves. My mother sat frozen before the screen. The anchor's voice filled the room. Harper Lane, originally from the small town of Crescent Hollow, Ohio, has captured national attention with her innovative approach to rural education. My face appeared on screen, accepting the award, speaking about opportunity and perseverance. My mother's coffee cup trembled in her hand. I was not there to witness this moment. I learned about it later from neighbors who could not stop talking about the expression on Margaret Lane's face when she realized her daughter had become somebody without her permission. But I can imagine it clearly. The shock, the confusion, the dawning horror of public exposure. My father walked in from the kitchen just as the segment mentioned that I had built my company while working as a waitress. What is this nonsense? It's Harper. My mother's voice was barely audible. On the television. That can't be right. Harper doesn't have a real job. But there I was, undeniably real, undeniably successful, being celebrated by millions of people who had never met me. The cognitive dissonance must have been unbearable. For 30 years, my parents had constructed a narrative in which I was the failure and Bryce was the star. That narrative was crumbling in high definition. My brother came downstairs in response to the commotion. He took one look at the screen and laughed. The media loves a sob story. They probably embellished everything. She won $8 million, my mother said hollowly. It's real. The phone started ringing. Neighbors calling with congratulations. Distant relatives demanding to know why they had not been told. Church friends expressing surprise that the Lane family's success story was not about Bryce. Why didn't she tell us? My father demanded, as if my silence was a personal affront. We're her family. We should have known about this first. My mother suddenly remembered the messages she had sent me 2 days ago. The $37,000. The locks. The declaration that I was not expected at Christmas. Her face went pale. Thomas. Her voice cracked. The texts we sent her. He remembered too. I watched his expression harden as the implications became clear. They had treated their newly famous daughter like a burden while she was on the verge of winning a national prize. If that information became public, their reputation in Crescent Hollow would be destroyed. She wouldn't tell anyone about that, my father said, but he did not sound confident. Family business stays private. She didn't have to tell anyone. Bryce had pulled up social media on his phone and was scrolling rapidly. People are already asking questions. Look at these comments. Where is her family? Why wasn't anyone there to celebrate with her? Her parents must be so proud. Someone from town already replied saying we weren't at the ceremony. My mother began to cry. Not, I suspect, because she felt remorse about how she had treated me. She cried because she was embarrassed. The carefully constructed illusion of the loving, supportive Lane family was falling apart, and she had no idea how to rebuild it. We need to call her, my father said. Right now. Get her to come home and tell everyone we've always supported her. She's not answering. Bryce had already tried. I've called 6 times. My mother grabbed her own phone and dialed my number. It rang and rang before going to voicemail. She tried again with the same result. She's ignoring us. The realization seemed to genuinely shock her. Our own daughter is ignoring us. The irony was lost on them. They had ignored me for 30 years. They had dismissed my achievements, belittled my ambitions, and prioritized my brother at every possible turn. But now that I was refusing to answer their calls, suddenly I was the ungrateful one. The local news moved on to weather, but the damage was done. The phone kept ringing. Neighbors kept asking questions. And somewhere in the collective consciousness of Crescent Hollow, a new understanding was forming. The Lane family was not what it had always claimed to be. My brother threw himself onto the couch. This is ridiculous. She's doing this on purpose, making us look bad. She's not doing anything, my father snapped. That's the problem. She's not defending us. He was right in a way. My silence was its own statement. By not crediting my family with support, by not bringing them to the ceremony, by not answering their frantic calls, I was telling the world a truth I had never spoken aloud. I had done this alone. I had succeeded despite my family, not because of them. My mother composed herself enough to send me a text. Harper, please call us. The whole town is talking. We need to clear up some misunderstandings. I read that message from my hotel room in Columbus. Misunderstandings. As if the truth was simply a miscommunication that could be corrected with the right words. As if years of neglect and favoritism could be explained away as a series of minor confusions. I did not respond. Another message arrived. Your father is very hurt that you didn't include us in this moment. We're your family, Harper. That should mean something. Family should mean something. I agreed completely. It should mean support and encouragement and showing up when it matters. It should mean not changing the locks on Christmas Eve. It should mean not demanding $37,000 as the price of presents. Family should mean something, but the Lanes had taught me that it did not always mean what it should. I turned off my phone and went to bed. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more demands, more attempts to rewrite history. But tonight, I slept soundly for the first time in years. The secret was out. The truth was spreading. And my family would have to face the consequences of choices they had made long before I ever won a prize. 4 years before I won the National Innovation Prize, I left Crescent Hollow, Ohio with a backpack containing everything I owned. It was January. The temperature had dropped to 12 degrees, and the Greyhound bus that would carry me to Chicago was 40 minutes late. I stood outside the station in my thin coat, watching my breath plume in the frozen air, and I made a promise to myself that I would never return as a failure. The city embraced me with its indifference. Chicago was vast and indifferent, a maze of concrete and strangers that did not care about my small-town origins or my family's expectations. I had found an apartment the size of a closet in a building that should have been condemned. The ceiling had leaked when it rained. The heating had worked sporadically. My first night there, I had eaten crackers for dinner because I could not afford anything else. I found work at a diner called Oscar's on the northwest side of the city. The pay was terrible. The hours were brutal, and my feet ached constantly from standing on hard floors. but Oscar's was open 24 hours, which meant I could work the overnight shift and spend my days learning to code. I also picked up work as a part-time housekeeper on the weekends to cover expenses. I had discovered programming in high school during the brief period when my family could not prevent me from accessing the school computer lab. The logic of it appealed to me. Unlike family dynamics, code made sense. If you wrote something correctly, it worked. If you made an error, you could find and fix it. There was no favoritism in programming, no arbitrary rules that benefited some people over others. During those early months in Chicago, I survived on caffeine and determination. I would finish my shift at Oscar's at 6 in the morning, go home, sleep for 4 hours, then spend the rest of the day teaching myself Python and JavaScript, online courses, tutorial videos, coding challenges that stretched my mind in new directions. I sent my family updates occasionally, brief messages about my progress, my hopes for the future, my growing skills. My mother responded once, "When are you going to stop playing with computers and find a husband?" That was the moment I stopped expecting anything from them. I met Mira Collins at a coding boot camp I had saved 3 months of tips to attend. She was brilliant and driven and came from a background as difficult as my own. Her father had told her that women did not belong in technology. Her mother had insisted she become a nurse or a teacher, something appropriately feminine. Instead, she had learned to build software and was determined to prove everyone wrong. We became friends immediately, then partners, then co-founders of something that started as a conversation over cheap coffee at a 24-hour cafe. "Rural schools are being left behind," I told her. "Kids in places like where I grew up have no access to quality STEM education. The internet exists, but the proper programs don't. We could build an AI-powered STEM learning platform that changes that. Personalized curriculum that adapts to each student's level and pace," she said, her eyes lighting up. "Exactly. Something that gives kids in small towns the same opportunities as kids in wealthy suburbs." We started building ArcLight Learning with $312 between us. I worked double shifts at Oscar's while Mira took freelance coding jobs. Every spare moment went into the platform. Every spare dollar went into server costs and software licenses. The first year was brutal. We pitched our idea to 47 potential investors and received 47 rejections. Too niche, they said. Too risky. The market for rural education technology was too small to matter. But the market was not small to me. The market was every kid who grew up feeling invisible, every student who dreamed of something bigger but never saw a path forward, every young person trapped in a small town by limited expectations and even more limited resources. We kept building. We kept refining. And slowly, painfully, ArcLight began to work. A retired tech executive named Harrison Sullivan became our informal mentor after I sent him the 143rd cold email of my fundraising campaign. He did not invest money, but he invested something more valuable: time, attention, expertise. He saw something in my determination that reminded him of his own early struggles. "You have the hunger," he told me during one of our meetings. "Most founders lose it when things get hard, but you treat every obstacle like fuel." I did not tell him that I had been treating obstacles like fuel my entire life. My family had provided an endless supply. By the end of our second year, ArcLight Learning was serving 2,000 students in rural communities across 3 states. Our retention rates were extraordinary. Our student outcomes exceeded national averages. We had built something that actually worked, and word was spreading. The invitation to the National Innovator Summit arrived on a Tuesday. I read the email 3 times before believing it was real. We had been selected as finalists for the $8 million grand prize. The competition would take place in Columbus on Christmas Day. I thought about calling my parents with the news. For a brief moment, I imagined a different family, one that would celebrate this milestone and wish me luck. Then I remembered reality and deleted the draft message I had started. The night before I left Chicago for Columbus, I packed my bag and looked around my small apartment. It was nicer now than the closet I had started in, but still modest by any standard. Everything I had built was represented in that space. The laptop where I had coded through countless sleepless nights, the stack of rejection letters I kept as motivation, the framed certificate from the coding boot camp where I had met Mira Collins, I was ready, not just for the competition, but for whatever came after. Win or lose, I had already proven something important. I had proven that Harper Lane was capable of building a life on her own terms. What I did not anticipate was what waited for me in Ohio: the locked door, the hostile messages, the $37,000 demand, my family's final confirmation that I had never been more than a burden to them. But that was the thing about burning bridges. Sometimes the fire cleared a path forward. The morning of the pitch finals dawned bright and cold. Columbus glittered under a layer of fresh snow, and the convention center hummed with energy that felt almost electric. Today, one company would walk away with $8 million. Today, everything I had worked for would be tested. Mira Collins met me in the hotel lobby at 6 in the morning. Neither of us had slept well. The weight of the opportunity pressed down on us like something physical. 19th revision of the pitch deck, she said, holding up her laptop. I changed 2 slides at 4 a.m. Which ones? The impact metrics and the scaling projections. They're tighter now. We had practiced our presentation so many times that I could recite it in my sleep. Every word chosen for maximum effect. Every slide designed to tell a story. We knew our company better than we knew ourselves, and today we would have 8 minutes to convince a panel of judges that ArcLight Learning deserved to win. The other finalist companies were already at the convention center when we arrived. I recognized some of them from the previous days of networking. A healthcare app backed by serious Silicon Valley money. A sustainability platform with celebrity endorsements. A fintech solution that had already raised $10 million in preliminary funding. And then there was us. 2 women from nowhere, with no famous investors and no Ivy League credentials, asking for a chance to change education. A woman from one of the other finalist teams approached us near the coffee station. Her suit probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked at my badge and smiled in a way that did not reach her eyes. ArcLight Learning, right? The education thing for rural areas. That's us. Interesting niche. She sipped her coffee. Small market, though. Hard to scale something like that. I recognized the tactic. Competitors sometimes tried to shake your confidence before a big pitch. I had encountered worse doubt from my own family. The market is larger than most people realize, I said calmly. 50 million Americans live in rural areas. Their children deserve the same educational opportunities as everyone else. She shrugged and walked away, clearly unimpressed. Mira watched her go with narrowed eyes. Don't let her get to you. She didn't. People have been underestimating me my entire life. My phone buzzed with a notification, a text from my brother. Mom says you're presenting something today, another one of your projects that won't go anywhere. I deleted the message without responding. The voice of doubt in my head did not need any reinforcement. The pitching order was determined by lottery. We drew position 4 out of 5, which meant watching 3 other companies present before our turn. Each one was polished and professional, backed by data, and delivered with confidence. The judges nodded approvingly. The audience applauded. The competition was fierce. When my name was called, I walked to the stage feeling strangely calm. The lights were blinding, but beyond them I could sense the crowd waiting. Investors with the power to change lives. Journalists who would spread whatever story emerged today. And somewhere in the ether, a small town in Ohio that had never believed I would amount to anything. Good morning, I began. My name is Harper Lane, and I'm the founder of ArcLight Learning. I grew up in a small town in Ohio where the nearest computer science class was 40 miles away. If you wanted to learn about technology, you either figured it out yourself or you didn't learn at all. The room was quiet, listening. Rural America is being left behind. Our children are smart, motivated, and capable, but they're trapped in educational deserts where opportunity is scarce. ArcLight Learning was built to change that. We use artificial intelligence to create personalized STEM curriculum that meets students where they are, wherever they are. I clicked to the next slide. Numbers filled the screen. Students served, test score improvements, college acceptance rates among our users. These aren't just statistics. These are children whose lives have changed because someone finally gave them a chance. A 14-year-old in Nebraska who is now interning at a tech company. a 16-year-old in West Virginia who just received a full scholarship to study engineering, a 12-year-old in my home state of Ohio who told me last month that she wants to build robots, and now she actually can. Mira Collins joined me on stage for the technical demonstration. Our platform loaded smoothly, showcasing the AI-driven interface that adapted to each student's needs. The judges leaned forward in their seats. "I started this company while working as a waitress in Chicago," I continued. "I built the prototype in a studio apartment that barely had heat. I did this because I remember what it felt like to be overlooked, to be told that my dreams were unrealistic, to be dismissed before I even had a chance to prove myself." My voice caught slightly on those words, but I pushed through. $8 million will allow us to reach 100,000 students in the next 2 years, 100,000 young people who might otherwise never discover their potential, 100,000 futures that matter. The applause that followed was loud enough to feel in my chest. I returned to my seat with my hands shaking and my heart racing. Mira gripped my arm. "You killed it. We killed it." After the presentations concluded, the judges retreated to deliberate. The other finalists milled around nervously checking phones and whispering to their teams. I sat in a corner and tried to breathe normally. A journalist approached me with a notepad. Beatrice Monroe, according to her badge. She wrote for a major innovation publication. "Ms. Lane, I'd like to interview you for our website. Your story is remarkable." "Thank you. I'd be happy to talk." She asked about my background, my journey to founding ArcLight, the challenges I had overcome. I answered honestly without embellishment. The truth was compelling enough. "One more question," she said. "What would winning this prize mean to you personally?" I thought for a moment before answering. Validation. Not that I need external validation to know my work matters, but winning would prove that the people who dismissed me were wrong. It would show every kid from a small town that their dreams are valid, and it would give me the resources to help a lot more people. She nodded and thanked me for my time. Later that day, her article would go viral, but at that moment, I had no idea how much my life was about to change. Beatrice Monroe's article appeared online the following morning with a headline that stopped my heart. "From Forgotten to Founder, the Unlikely Rise of Harper Lane." The story spread across social media like wildfire, shared and reshared, until my name trended on platforms I barely used. The piece was thorough and moving. Beatrice had captured my journey with empathy and precision, highlighting the obstacles I had overcome without sensationalizing my struggles. She mentioned that I had grown up in a small Ohio town. She noted that I had built my company while working service jobs. She quoted my pitch about rural STEM education and children being left behind. What she did not mention, because I had not told her, was my family. But their absence from the story spoke volumes. Any reader paying attention would notice that no parents were quoted celebrating their daughter's success. No siblings praised her determination. The support structure that most success stories relied upon simply did not exist in mine. Mira Collins called me at 7 in the morning. "Have you seen the numbers? The article has been shared 50,000 times already." "I'm watching them climb." "Harper, this is incredible. The phone is ringing nonstop. Interview requests from every major outlet. Investment firms reaching out. You've become a symbol." A symbol. I had only wanted to build something useful, but the world had decided I represented something larger. The underdog who refused to stay down. The woman who succeeded despite every attempt to hold her back. In Crescent Hollow, Ohio, the local news picked up the national story. Mrs. Patterson called to tell me that my face had appeared on the morning broadcast, that the whole town was talking, that people who had dismissed me for years were suddenly reassessing their judgments. "Your parents looked quite surprised when they saw the segment," she said diplomatically. "I don't think they knew. They knew I was presenting at the summit. They just didn't think I would win." "Well," she paused, "some people are reconsidering things they thought they knew." The reactions from my family arrived via text and voicemail throughout the day. My mother's messages shifted in tone from demanding to pleading. "Harper, please call us. We're so proud of you. We always knew you were special." My father left a voicemail that managed to combine congratulations with criticism. "Why didn't you tell us about this? Families are supposed to communicate." Bryce's response was the most revealing. He posted a lengthy comment on a social media thread about the article, claiming credit for encouraging my interest in technology and insisting that the Lane family had always supported my dreams. The replies he received were brutal. People who had grown up with us, who had watched my family prioritize Bryce at every turn, called out his lies publicly. I watched this unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion. For years, I had kept my family's treatment of me private. I had never complained publicly, never tried to turn my struggles into sympathy. But now, without any effort on my part, the truth was emerging. People who knew us were speaking up. The narrative my parents had maintained for decades was crumbling under the weight of reality. Harrison Sullivan, my mentor, called to offer congratulations. The judges were very impressed. "You're in a strong position. Thank you for everything you've taught me. I taught you nothing you didn't already know. I just helped you see it more clearly." That evening, I received an unexpected invitation. A group called Women Who Build America wanted me to speak at their annual conference in March. They had seen the article and the competition coverage and believed my story would inspire their audience. "We're looking for speakers who embody resilience and authentic success," the email explained. "Your journey from a small Ohio town to national recognition is exactly what our members need to hear." I accepted immediately. The platform to share my message was as valuable as any monetary prize. As the day wore on and the media attention intensified, I became aware of a growing discomfort in Crescent Hollow. Neighbors were asking my parents questions they could not answer. Church friends were offering congratulations that felt like accusations. The community that had accepted the Lane family's version of events for 30 years was suddenly reconsidering. My mother sent a final message that night. "Harper, please don't come back to town right now. Things are complicated. We need time to sort this out." I read those words and laughed out loud. They had locked me out on Christmas Eve, demanded money I did not owe them, and told me I was not expected at the family gathering. Now, when my presence might force them to confront their own behavior, they were asking me to stay away. I did not respond. There was nothing left to say. The email arrived at 9 a.m. on New Year's Eve. 3 words in the subject line that changed everything. "Congratulations, you won." Mira Collins screamed so loudly through the phone that I had to hold it away from my ear. "Harper, we did it. We actually did it. $8 million, national recognition, the resources to scale ArcLight learning beyond anything we had imagined." I sat on my hotel bed and let the reality wash over me. The official announcement would come later that day at a ceremony broadcast on multiple networks. But the judges wanted me to know first to prepare for the media storm that would follow. They sent a detailed schedule of interviews and photo opportunities, each time slot filled with another platform eager to share my story. I thought about calling my parents. The impulse lasted approximately 3 seconds before I remembered who they were. The ceremony took place that afternoon in the main auditorium of the convention center. Cameras from national outlets lined the walls. Investors and journalists filled the seats. And at the podium, waiting to announce the winner, stood some of the most influential figures in American technology. When my name was called, the applause was deafening. I walked to the stage on legs that felt disconnected from my body, accepted a ceremonial check that was larger than I was, and faced a room of people who believed I had earned this moment. "Thank you," I said into the microphone. "This prize belongs to every child in every forgotten corner of this country who has been told they don't matter. It belongs to every young person who dreams of building something but doesn't know where to start. And it belongs to everyone who has ever been underestimated and refused to accept that judgment." The cameras captured every word. The networks broadcast my speech live. And in living rooms across Ohio, including one on Maple Street in Crescent Hollow, people watched Harper Lane become impossible to ignore. My mother called during the reception. I saw her name on my phone and let it ring until it went to voicemail. She tried again and again. Eventually, she sent a text. "Harper, we saw everything. We're so proud. Please come home so we can celebrate together." Celebrate? As if there had been any celebration when I had graduated from coding boot camp. as if anyone had celebrated when I had launched my company or served my first 1,000 students. Now that cameras were involved, suddenly they wanted to participate. Bryce left a voicemail that I did not listen to until much later. His voice was tight with an emotion I did not recognize at first. Envy, I realized. Pure, undisguised envy. Congratulations, I guess. Must be nice to have everything handed to you. Handed to me. I had worked 18-hour days for 3 years. I had sacrificed sleep and security and sanity. I had built ArcLight Learning from nothing while my brother collected praise for existing. But sure, everything had been handed to me. Back in Crescent Hollow, the fallout was accelerating. Neighbors who had accepted the Lane family narrative were now questioning everything. Social media buzzed with comments from people who had grown up with us, sharing stories I had never told. The time my parents had refused to attend my science fair. The way Bryce was excused from chores while I worked constantly. The messages I had apparently sent over the years that my mother had never responded to. I remember when Harper was in my English class, one former teacher posted. She was brilliant and kind and worked harder than anyone. Her family never seemed to notice. Watching her win today feels like justice. Justice. That word kept appearing in comments and messages and interviews. People saw my success as corrective, as proof that the universe sometimes balanced itself. I was not sure I believed in that kind of cosmic fairness, but I understood why others found comfort in the narrative. That night, as fireworks welcomed the new year across the country, I sat alone in my hotel room and thought about what came next. The money would change everything. We could hire staff, expand our reach, serve exponentially more students. ArcLight Learning was about to become something much larger than 2 women with a laptop and a dream. But the personal implications were harder to process. My family had been exposed not by anything I had said, but by the simple fact of my success. Their treatment of me was now public knowledge, scrutinized by strangers who had opinions about parenting and fairness and love. I did not feel triumphant. I felt tired. The victory was real, but so was the weight of carrying it alone. Mira Collins arrived at my door with a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. We toasted to ArcLight, to each other, to the future. And for a few hours I let myself feel pure joy without complication. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: media training, financial planning, the complicated work of scaling a company while maintaining its soul. But tonight, on the first evening of a new year, I allowed myself to simply be happy. I had won. Not just the prize, but the argument that had defined my entire life. I was not the failure my family had created in their minds. I was Harper Lane founder and visionary, and the whole world knew it now. The final celebration was scheduled for the following week in Chicago, a grand event at a downtown venue with industry leaders and media, and all the fanfare that $8 million could attract. But before I could focus on that triumph, I had to address the growing chaos in Ohio. My family had made their own travel arrangements. I discovered this when Harrison Sullivan called to warn me that he had received inquiries from someone claiming to be my father. He wanted to know if he could speak at your celebration event, Harrison said carefully, something about how the family was always supportive. I closed my eyes. What did you tell him? That all decisions about the program were made by you and your team. He didn't seem pleased. My parents arrived in Chicago the day before the ceremony. Bryce came with them. I learned this from Mira Collins, who had spotted them in the lobby of my hotel, apparently trying to convince the concierge to reveal my room number. "They're not here to congratulate you," Mira said grimly. "They're here to save face." I knew she was right. My family's sudden interest in my success had nothing to do with love or pride. It had everything to do with public perception. They had spent 30 years diminishing me, and now they needed to revise history before the cameras captured their shame. I sent my mother a single text. "I know you're in Chicago. Please do not approach me or my team at tomorrow's event. If you want to speak, contact my office." Her response was immediate and indignant. "We're your family, Harper. You can't treat us like enemies." I could. I had been treated like an enemy in my own home for my entire life. The difference was that I was treating them with the dignity of advance notice. The ceremony venue was spectacular. A converted warehouse with soaring ceilings and modern lighting filled with the kind of people who shaped the technology industry. Journalists lined the press area, investors circulated with champagne flutes, and at the center of it all, a stage with my name on a banner large enough to read from space. I arrived early to prepare wearing a dress I had bought specifically for this occasion. Navy blue professional, but not boring, chosen because it made me feel powerful. Mira was at my side, fielding last-minute questions and keeping reporters at bay. "Your family is in the back," she warned. "They managed to get tickets somehow." I spotted them near the rear of the venue, my father in an ill-fitting suit, my mother in a dress I recognized from church functions, Bryce looking uncomfortable in formal attire. They had positioned themselves at the edge of the crowd, watching me with expressions I could not read. The program began with speeches from industry leaders and summit organizers. They talked about innovation and perseverance, about the American dream, and the importance of supporting entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds. Then it was my turn. I walked to the stage as my name was announced, applause swelling like a wave. The lights were bright but not blinding. I could see faces in the crowd, supporters, doubters, my family sitting stiff and silent in the back row. "Thank you all for being here," I began. "This prize represents something larger than me or my company. It represents the idea that success is not reserved for those with the right background or the right connections. It belongs to anyone willing to work for it." I talked about ArcLight Learning's mission and impact. I shared statistics and stories. I painted a picture of the future we were building where every child had access to quality education, regardless of geography or income. And then I said something I had not planned. I want to acknowledge the many people who told me I would fail. The mentors who closed their doors, the investors who laughed at my pitch, the voices from my past who insisted that someone like me could not build something like this. The room was very quiet. To all of them, I say thank you. Not because they were right, but because they were wrong. Every no I received became fuel. Every rejection became motivation. And standing here today, I can tell you with absolute certainty that the doubters never have the final word. I did not look at my family during that speech. I did not need to. The message was clear to anyone paying attention. After the formal presentation, there was a reception. People approached to congratulate me, to ask for meetings, to share their own stories of overcoming obstacles. I smiled and nodded and tried to remember names. Then my mother appeared at my elbow. "Harper." Her voice was strained. "We need to talk, as a family." "This isn't the place." "Then where you won't answer our calls, you won't respond to our messages. Your own parents are being treated like enemies." I turned to face her fully. Behind her, my father and brother hovered uncertainly. "You changed the locks on Christmas Eve," I said quietly. "You demanded $37,000 as the price of my presence. You have spent my entire life telling me I was not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy of the attention you gave Bryce. And now, because I succeeded despite everything you did to hold me back, you want to pretend none of that happened." My mother's face went pale. "That's not fair. We did our best." "Your best was terrible. I built this company while you told me I was wasting my time. I earned this prize while you demanded money I didn't owe you. And now you want to share credit for success you tried to prevent." Mira Collins appeared at my side, ready to intervene, but I did not need protection. I had waited 30 years to say these words. "I don't owe you anything. Not my time, not my money, not my forgiveness. If you want a relationship with me, it starts with honesty. It starts with acknowledging what you did. And until that happens, you are not welcome in my life." I walked away before they could respond. The celebration continued around us, champagne flowing and cameras flashing, and my family stood frozen in the back of the room as the world they thought they knew collapsed around them. I woke the day after the ceremony to find my inbox flooded with messages from around the world. Interview requests, partnership proposals, investment offers, and nestled among the professional correspondence, a series of increasingly desperate communications from Crescent Hollow, Ohio. My mother had sent 17 texts overnight. The tone shifted dramatically across those messages, cycling through denial, anger, bargaining, and something that might have been grief. "You don't understand what it was like for us." We tried our best with the resources we had. Bryce needed more support. You were always fine on your own. Please, Harper, give us a chance to explain. I read each message once and save them without responding. Someday, perhaps these texts would serve as evidence of the family dynamic I had survived. For now, they were simply data points in a story I no longer needed to tell. The news cycle had moved on from the prize announcement itself to the human interest angle beneath it. Reporters had started digging into my background, talking to people from Crescent Hollow, piecing together a picture that my family had hoped would remain hidden. Beatrice Monroe, the journalist who had first profiled me, called with a request. People are asking questions about your family situation. Would you be willing to comment on the record? No. My family's treatment of me is personal. I don't need to turn my pain into content. I understand. For what it's worth, I've spoken with several people from your hometown. The picture they paint is consistent with what you've implied without saying directly. People believe what they see, I said. My family's behavior at the ceremony spoke for itself. She agreed to keep any family details out of future coverage at my request. I appreciated her discretion, even as I understood that the story was already spreading beyond anyone's control. In Crescent Hollow, the consequences of exposure were accelerating, Mrs. Patterson called to update me on local developments. My parents had stopped attending church, apparently unable to face the congregation's questions. Bryce had lost his position with the local band after a public argument about why his sister was successful and he was not. Neighbors who had accepted the Lane family narrative for decades were now reassessing everything they thought they knew. People feel embarrassed, Mrs. Patterson said. They believed your parents for so long. Now they're wondering what else they missed. That's not my responsibility to manage. No, dear, it isn't. But I thought you should know. I thanked her and ended the call. The vindication I had imagined so many times felt different in reality. There was no satisfaction in watching people suffer, even people who had hurt me. There was only the hollow recognition that damage had been done on all sides and healing would take longer than anyone expected. Mira Collins arrived at my hotel room with lunch and legal documents. The prize money had officially transferred to ArcLight Learning's accounts. We had hiring decisions to make, expansion plans to finalize a future to build that was suddenly much larger than before. Ready to become a real company, she asked, spreading contracts across the desk. Ready as I'll ever be. We spent the afternoon working through logistics, office space, staff recruitment, partnerships with school districts. Each decision felt consequential in ways our previous choices had not. We were no longer scrappy underdogs hoping for a break. We were funded entrepreneurs with resources and responsibilities. During a break, I checked my phone and found a message from my brother. Unlike his previous communications, this one was subdued, almost apologetic. I've been thinking about what you said, about how we treated you. I don't know if you're right, but I'm starting to wonder. It was not an apology. It was barely an acknowledgement, but it was the closest Bryce had ever come to questioning the family narrative. I saved the message without responding. My father sent a voicemail that evening. I listened to it with the volume turned low, bracing for anger or demands. Instead, his voice was tired, confused, almost broken. Harper, I don't understand how we got here. You were always so independent. We thought you didn't need us. Maybe we were wrong. I don't know anymore. I played the message twice, trying to find the accusation hidden beneath the surface. But for once, my father seemed genuinely bewildered rather than hostile. 30 years of certainty about his daughter had been upended in a week. He did not know how to process the change. I still did not respond. Their confusion was not my burden to ease. That night, I walked along the Chicago waterfront and watched lights shimmer on Lake Michigan. The city had been my home for 4 years now, the place where I had rebuilt myself from fragments my family had tried to discard. Standing there in the cold January air, I finally allowed myself to feel what I had been suppressing since the announcement. Relief. Not triumph or vindication, but simple relief. The secret of my family's treatment was no longer mine to carry alone. The world had seen what they refused to acknowledge, And I was free finally and completely to move forward without looking back. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The work of building arc-light learning into something sustainable. The media attention that showed no signs of fading. The complicated emotions that success could never fully resolve. But tonight, I stood at the edge of a frozen lake and breathed deeply for the first time in years. I had survived. I had succeeded. And I no longer needed anyone's permission to be proud of myself. 3 months after winning the National Innovation Prize, I drove into Crescent Hollow, Ohio for what I knew would be the last time. The snow had melted, replaced by early spring mud that clung to everything. Daffodils were pushing through the soil in front yards I remembered from childhood. The town looked smaller than I had left it, though I understood that the shrinking was mine, not mine. I had come for closure, not reconciliation. There were things that needed to be said in person, not through text messages or voicemails. And there were items still in that house that belonged to me. The reception I received from the town was different now. Mr. Riley at the hardware store waved enthusiastically when I passed. Dorothy from the elementary school approached my car to offer congratulations. Mrs. Patterson hugged me on her front lawn. "We always knew you were special," she said, and I smiled without correcting her. They had not always known. But they knew now, and perhaps that was enough. My parents' house looked exactly as it always had, white paint peeling near the gutters, brown shutters that needed replacing. The porch where I had stood on Christmas Eve with a key that no longer worked. I knocked. I could have walked in. The locks had probably been changed back by now. But this was not my home anymore, and I would not pretend otherwise. My mother opened the door. She had aged in the 3 months since I had seen her. Lines I did not remember creased her forehead. Her eyes held something I struggled to identify. Fear, perhaps, or resignation. "Harper." Her voice cracked slightly. "You came." "I came to get my things, and to say what needs to be said." She stepped aside to let me enter. The living room was unchanged. Same floral couch, same family portraits, same evidence of a narrative that had never included me. My father emerged from the kitchen, moving slowly, his usual bluster absent. Bryce appeared on the stairs, looking uncertain in a way I had never seen from him. We stood in the living room like strangers at an awkward party. No one seemed to know how to begin. "I'm not here to yell," I said finally. "I'm not here to punish you. I'm here because there are things I need to say, and then I need to leave." My mother sat down heavily on the couch. My father remained standing, his hands in his pockets. "For 30 years you treated me like an afterthought. Everything went to Bryce. Every opportunity, every dollar, every shred of attention. And when I succeeded, despite that, you were angry instead of proud. When I built something remarkable with nothing but my own work, you demanded money. When I came home for Christmas, you locked me out." No one interrupted. The room was very still. "I used to think I could earn your love if I just worked hard enough. I thought that maybe if I achieved something big enough, you would finally see me. But that was never true. You had decided who I was before I had a chance to become anything. Nothing I did was ever going to change your mind." My mother started to speak, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. I need you to understand something. I'm not here to ask for an apology. Apologies won't fix what's broken. I'm here to tell you that I'm done trying to fit into a family that never wanted me. I'm done hoping for something that was never offered. I'm setting a boundary. Either you treat me with respect, or we have no relationship at all. There's nothing in between." The silence stretched. My father shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Bryce stared at the floor. Finally, my mother spoke. "We didn't know. We thought you were fine. You never said anything. I said everything. You just weren't listening." She had no response to that. I collected the boxes I had come for. Photo albums from my childhood. Awards my parents had never displayed. A few books my grandmother had given me before she died. Small things, but mine. As I loaded the last box into my car, Bryce followed me outside. He stood on the porch steps watching me with an expression I could not read. "I always knew you were smarter than me," he said quietly. "It scared Dad. I think that's why he pushed you away." I looked at my brother, really looked at him for the first time in years. He was not the enemy I had constructed in my mind. He was just a person who had benefited from a broken system without questioning it. "That's not an excuse," I said, "but I appreciate you saying it. Will you ever come back?" "I don't know. That depends on whether things change." I drove out of Crescent Hollow without looking in the rearview mirror. The past was behind me, and ahead was everything I had built. 2 weeks later, ArcLight Learning moved into its new headquarters, a renovated warehouse in Chicago's Innovation District with windows that face the lake and enough space for the 50 employees we planned to hire that year. Mira Collins and I stood in the lobby watching workers install our logo on the wall, ArcLight Learning, 2 words that represented everything we had sacrificed and achieved. "We did it," Mira said softly. "We actually did it." We did. That evening I stood alone in my office after everyone had gone home. The city glittered through the windows. The future stretched ahead like an open road, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace. I did not need my family's approval. I never had. The years of rejection had hurt, but they had also shaped me into someone strong enough to survive without support. I had built ArcLight Learning from nothing. I had proven every doubter wrong, and I had found a family of my own choosing in the people who believed in me when it mattered. My phone buzzed with the message from one of our students in rural Ohio, a 16-year-old girl who had just been accepted to her dream college. "Thank you, Ms. Lane," she wrote. "You showed me that where you start doesn't have to be where you end." I smiled and typed back, "You showed yourself. I just helped you see what was already there." Outside my window, Chicago hummed with possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new obstacles, new opportunities to make a difference. But tonight, I was content simply to be Harper Lane, founder, survivor, the woman who had proved that the people who doubt you never have the final word. If you are reading this and you have ever been dismissed by your own family, please know that your worth is not determined by their approval. Build your own house, tell your own story, and never let anyone convince you that you are less